sticking with rugby here in OTB AM. There was one man who did call England's win at the weekend. Have a look.
The kicking game is a really important part of unsettling New Zealand. But I think England have got to play as well, because if you're trying to contain them and stop them and slow them down, it's a very, very dangerous scenario, because they can generate slow ball into really quick ball as well.
Yeah, all right, just quickly before we let you go, Quinny, if you will, give us your prediction for that and the second semi on Sunday.
It's only a gut feeling, Adrian. I think that game is going to be quite close, and on form, New Zealand, I think the bookies have them 10 points, maybe 8 or 10 points winning that game. I have a feeling that this England group are very, very mentally well prepared, and I think there's a lot of top-class players in that group, and I think they will physically match New Zealand. I think they may cause a bit of a surprise tomorrow.
Right.
I think South Africa, given on what we've seen from Wales last week, and Liam Williams is a huge loss. I think he would have been really crucial. I know Halfpenny's a good player, but Liam Williams is brilliant in the air. I think South Africa will probably just edge that one.
So to be absolutely clear, you're calling England?
England-South Africa final.
Wow.
There's nobody else calling England.
Big call. No, I haven't heard many. I haven't heard many who aren't English.
Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are you?
That was a good call.
Well, look, it's I hate saying I told you so, but I told you so.
You did. You definitely did. Where did that confidence in England come from?
I just think that some people have probably criticised this and say, well, Ireland are so far behind. But when you get a massive win like that, like New Zealand got against Ireland, it was easier than they expected. Everything worked out for them. Their precision, their accuracy was superb. And you get a real emotional high from that. It's very difficult to replicate that the week after, particularly when you're playing a team who have so much strength, power, and are going to be highly motivated on the other side. They're playing against the world champions, the favourites for the tournament. So their emotion is going to go through the roof. And New Zealand's, it's just hard to maintain it. I think they always backed themselves, even hearing Kieran Reid after the match saying, look, where do New Zealand go from here? And he said, look, we're All Blacks, and you know, every time you put on the jersey, there's an expectation, and we'll come again. And that is kind of the mentality of them. But I just think England were so highly motivated. And Eddie Jones is saying this for the last couple of years, that, you know, he's pointing to this semi-final, and if you're going to win a World Cup, you've got to beat New Zealand. He said that several times. So it wasn't solely that, but I think because they're a very good side as well, and they have a lot of very, very good players. I think there's world-class players in that team, and when you're winning big games, you need guys in form. Atoje, Curry, Hill, Vunipola brothers, that's 5 in the pack. Courtney Lawes has been really good, Sinclair good, Jamie George, so they have a lot of consistency in selection there. And then Farrell, I'm a massive fan of Owen Farrell. I think he's been, for me, the player of the tournament. He mightn't have stood out, but I just, as much as some other guys with some little bits of brilliance and stuff, but I just think his consistency, his kicking, his defence and his leadership, he's just been immense. And Tuolangi in the back line, you know, what a difference in a couple of years. He was struggling so bad for a couple of years. So, and then you look at their wingers, May and Watson. So right across the board, you're naming good, incredibly tough, talented players. And that's why I just had this feeling that England would really go after them physically. And listen, we said at the week of the Irish game that New Zealand have shown vulnerability this year, and they have. The scoreline flattered them a little bit against us. Now, Ireland were really poor on the day, but they're not as good as the 2015 team. There's no way they are.
They're definitely not, no, and they just don't have the street smart, that 2015 team. The two young lads in the back row, like, to be as experienced as they are at this age is a testimony to the ability of the England team to pick players who they want to be ready for a World Cup, as opposed to picking players who were the players in situ. I just wonder if we had two players coming through, would we have made them wait behind the lads who were already there, and then come the World Cup time being like, oh yeah, you're number 23, you know, you're very close to the team, as opposed to England putting them in 18 months ago and saying, right, we're going to be our players in the World Cup who take us there irrespective of how young you are?
Well, the problem is Ireland had a settled back row, didn't they? And they performed so well in 2000, probably 17, 18. Peter O'Mahony was on the lines, Stander was on the lines, Dan Levy had come through, Sean O'Brien was on the lines. I remember sitting in the show one morning with you and Owen, and we probably picked 10 back rows that could potentially start for Ireland. They were all in such good form in 17, 18. So the difference with England is that you couldn't probably nail down their two wing forwards in the last 2 or 3 years. You couldn't pick a back row. Vunipola was probably the only one that you could say was going to be definitely there. So, you know, I think I've asked myself that question. We put guys in. Well, we put in Larmour, we put in Andrew Porter, we put in James Ryan, we put in Levy. Now, the question is, should they have started this time? Should Larmour have started? Yes.
So Larmour,
Levy was in.
I think Larmour is the perfect example, because I think so. It's a similar enough situation where there were acceptable back row options available for England, but the one that they thought was going to give them the best chance of winning the World Cup was giving somebody the 10, 12 caps you need to get to, where you're no longer kind of, oh Jesus, this is the anthem, this is the bit where, you know, all that stuff that comes with the terror of being a new cap that you just get out of your system over the course of 18 months, and then you're like, oh, you know, I deserve to be here. Like, we really needed Larmour to start. We probably needed Conway to start in some ways as well, if we were going to be competitive.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, given the way the two of them played against Scotland, you think they played superbly. They were dangerous. They were good defensively. They brought loads of energy and quality, and we lacked that little bit of energy, didn't we? In the Japan game, in the New Zealand game, and we lacked it a little bit in Russia as well. Even though we got the bonus point, but it wasn't a good enough performance against Russia. So I think the difference probably with Curry and Underhill has been around a while, to be fair, is maturity. And if you're going to play guys in the back row, you've got to be hard, you've got to be tough, you've got to be abrasive, and you've got to be strong and mature. So it's grand saying we'll throw in one of the under-20s now this year from straight into Six Nations. But I think the age is one thing, but strength and power and maturity is another. And they're incredibly mature, you know what I mean? Curry, I stood beside Curry in Twickenham for that World Cup warm-up game. And he's massive. He's just so physically big and strong. He looks like a 30-year-old back row. It's hard to believe that he's only 21. Underhill has been around for a couple of years. He's been playing, he played in the Pro 14 with Ospreys, then he's played with Bath, and he's kind of been fast-tracked into the England setup. So there's definitely an argument to say, would we play him? I think Joe probably would have thrown him in there if we didn't have a settled back row. But we had this settled back row for the last 3 years. And that's the problem. The problem is the guys who delivered in 16, 17, 18 for Ireland, just their form wasn't good enough this year. And we probably didn't have the guys then to grasp, particularly in the forward pack, to throw in there. And so, you know, I think in a sense, he's been planning this because England targeted Underhill. I think he could have played for Wales as well, and he was playing with the Ospreys, and they went after him to get into Bath to come back into the English system. So they've been phenomenal players, though, haven't they?
Yeah.
Is it just down to form, though, Alan? Because if you look at our back row on paper, like the reason why we were so excited when you were picking your list of back rows in that depth chart is because you can get any amount of injuries and still have a top-class back row. And you go into the World Cup with a Van der Fleer, Peter O'Mahony, CJ Stander back row, which is a pretty good back row. Like, it's not a million miles away from Curry and Underhill, despite the form argument. I accept that. There has to be a bit more here that Eddie Jones can get that much out of their back row, that much of the breakdown, which is an area that Ireland thrived in and have thrived in under Joe Schmidt for so long.
They are a different type of player, Owen. There's no way anyone is as good as Underhill and Curry in World Rugby at the moment. It's just as simple as that. Maybe Ardy Sevilla in the back row, Hooper and Pocock, when they were playing really well, probably had the same effect. But the reality of these guys is they affect everything. And I keep saying this about the back row. I know I played there myself, but I really, truly believe it. Back rows can win and lose games to you. They can just destroy the opposition if they're unbelievably competitive, fit, strong, abrasive. And both of those guys are having so many big moments in the game, turning the ball over in crucial areas, making big tackles, just really tormenting the opposition. And so they're at a different level. And I haven't seen our back row do that. I think Peter O'Mahony against New Zealand last year in November had 3 or 4 massive moments, but they're different types of players. Curry and Hill are the full package. They can carry, they can tackle, they can be devastating at the breakdown. I think they're just your real modern day, energetic, devastating back row players who are just on the front foot, and they just create so much. So our depth chart that we looked at had a number of guys in there. Levy, I think if you had more depth, it might have even. I think if Levy, Sean O'Brien were fit,
Conan.
Conan as well was a loss, yeah, and he played well against Scotland. So I just think, look, maybe there was a bit too much pressure. Look, maybe this is a little bit of 07 where the back row, the team was picked. You look at the team that played against New Zealand, it was probably, you could have picked that 12 months ago. So hindsight's a great thing. And look, I said this about Joe Schmidt and his selection, that he believed these players could deliver and they would deliver again, and unfortunately it just never happened, and we were too static. So there's mistakes have been made, absolutely, and that's the problem.
Can I ask you about the point you made about New Zealand having a bit of a come down after the England game? There's a good chance that England will have a bit of a come down after the New Zealand game. Eddie Jones has obviously been here before, and successfully and unsuccessfully, once with the when he was involved with the Springboks in 07, and obviously in 2003 when they didn't get things right for the final, but like, you know, by the narrowest of margins. What do they do this week to make sure that they're not on a come down after that massive victory? Because it was, Brian O'Driscoll said, it's one of the best performances he's ever seen.
Well, they don't talk about it too much, I think, because sometimes if you talk about that situation too much, and it can maybe inhibit you a little bit. I think they just have to relax and really enjoy the week. And I think, in fairness to Eddie Jones, they did all that stuff really well last week. I think he kind of set the tone with his press conferences, saying that, look, the pressure is not us. We're going to enjoy the week and we're going to just train well. And sometimes you do everything right, Ger, and it just doesn't happen for you. And you can have that kind of static kind of feel about yourself, and it can kind of radiate throughout the team. I think that's the challenge for them. And Warren Gatland said it. Sometimes teams play their semi-final and then they struggle to perform in the final. It's going to be a very, very different game. And I think England were so much on the front foot, and they were the aggressors this week. They've got to find a different way of doing that. Obviously, they've got to bring uber aggression again, but South Africa won't go. You know, I think they won't physically outgun them every time. So they've got to play smart and not get sucked into a kicking game with South Africa. South Africa to really try and pressurise you and take the sting out of the game, if you like. So if they get the kind of front football they got the other day, and the pace and the width they played with, and Dricko was right. It was one of the best performances I'd ever seen against New Zealand as well. I think England in 2003 in Wellington with 13 players when they beat the All Blacks, that one kind of comes to mind, aside from the weekend. But South Africa have, and I was just looking at a stat, Wales averaged 1.6 metres against South Africa for their carries. And that's the lowest of any side ever in a Rugby World Cup. So what England have got to do is they've got to make sure that, you know, they're not stopped at source, and they're not slowed down, and they're not frustrated, and they're not forced into errors. I think Wales had 20 turnovers or something against South Africa at the weekend as well. So they'll get a different kind of strength and pressure this week. They've got to stay calm. And I think that was probably one of the most impressive things about the weekend, is they stayed calm in a really big environment. They were, you know, there was fury going through the minds and the bodies, but it was kind of controlled aggression. Their discipline was very good. They didn't go off their feet. They didn't shoot out of the line and give lots of penalties away. So it's just about staying calm and being patient against South Africa, because South Africa are the ones now that the emotion is going to be going through the roof. So look, I still think England are probably, you know, England are the better side, and they're the better footballing side. But it'll be really interesting. I don't think this is going to be like some people think after the weekend, that they're going to run away with it.
Is the final in Yokohama, or is it in the Tokyo Stadium?
It's in Tokyo Stadium.
Right, so it's only a 45,000 crowd. And Yokohama's only about an hour outside, is it, from...
Yeah, oh, you're the man beside you there. What happened and where do we go from here? We'll tell you.
Ultimately.
Where do we go from here?
Ultimately.
Where do we go from here?
Owen was staying out in Yokohama, but look, I look at it's at the end of the day, it's I think it's how both sides deal with the pressure. You can imagine. Sia Khaleesi did a video after the game, the Springboks captain, with all the players in the dressing room and talking about the support they're receiving at home. So it's huge for both countries, I think. That's my buzzword, isn't it? Huge.
Yeah. Well, the reason I was asking is they've got to stay in the same hotel the whole time. They were staying in the hotel that we were staying in, and they were hanging. Like it was, they could blend in, they could blend out. There was enough South African fans for them to be able to sense that there was a World Cup on, but there was also plenty of opportunities for them just to escape and wander off into the night in Tokyo. Like. It's as low key reaching of a final as you could possibly have coming through against Wales in that manner for South Africa. So it's perfect for them for Razzie.
Yeah, it is. They have 6 days turnaround though. That's the problem. So I think they're the team that have been in Japan the longest. They've been probably there nearly 8 weeks now because they played Japan, I think 2 weeks before the World Cup kicked off. So it's one last push for them really as well. So it's really, I think. Sometimes you can get a bit of cabin fever, but not for a final. This is going to be excitement for everyone. This is the ultimate, and it's really interesting to see how both teams will kind of manage that. And I really hope we get a brilliant final because
we need.
I think South Africa they're not gonna kick the letter off the ball and beat England. They've actually got to play. I think if you remember 2 years ago when they went to Wellington, they scored 5 or 6 tries against New Zealand. And it was an amazing game and they beat South Africa, or they beat New Zealand there. You think maybe they've got to create a little bit more than just kick the ball. But England kicked the ball 32 times against New Zealand as well. Yeah. Sometimes it gets lost in translation, if you like, when you have a really front foot performance, nobody's counting the kicks. It's really when you have a negative performance, people are going kicking afterwards. So England kicked the ball a fair bit as well. So let's hope we don't have the kind of performance or game we had on Sunday.
All right, Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.